hello. We're back again. Let's see if we can get this one on track on time. Hey, virtual conferences, eh? Sorry about the technology not working on the whiteboard. We have got a solution for the next bit because obviously we've got your challenges and opportunities, and we're going to be addressing those later on. And we will have a fix for that, and everything will be lovely and swimmingly, and my blood pressure will reduce. So we're back with the next. We're back with the next session. So one of the things when I got approached by University of Nottingham, I got to visit the lovely campus and meet some great people, and we got chatting about what it is that's going on for them right now, and one of them is around portfolios, about the sheer amount of work that's going on across the whole institution, and about how portfolio management holds some kind of key, not quite sure, and it makes sense that for this particular session, today, that we did do some focus on portfolio management. So I'm going to hand over to Eileen. I can see your screen. You're ready to go. Take it away. Thank you very much, lady.
That's the important bit. I'm glad you can see the screen, because that means kind of I can focus on talking and not kind of try and press 27 buttons as we kind of go through. Now, we're going to talk, there's two of us doing this session. Zoe, if you wave, then people kind of know who you are. And Zoe's going to be doing some conversation as well. So we're going to talk about portfolio management and the PMO, and we're going to talk about theory and reality. So in terms of kind of the two of us who are going to be speaking, obviously I've introduced myself. I'm Eileen Roden. Now we also I also am part of a training business, and I'm a certified trainer of management of portfolios. So when I talk affectionately about kind of living in textbook land, it's where I spend some of my time, and also as author of the P3O Best Management Practice, I spend quite a bit of time thinking about what a perfect world would look like. So I'm going to kind of touch a bit on the perfect world, but we have Zoe O'Toole with us. If you want to introduce yourself to Zoe about kind of your scrapes and kind of bruises from being in the real world.
Yeah, so I've been working in project management since the last millennium, which always sounds very impressive. Delivered projects for about 10 of those years, and then joined the much lighter side of PMO. So very interested in reading, love doing the courses, of course, love yours, Eileen. I have the privilege of training PMO, but one of the things I like about doing that is that I practice. I mainly do practice, which means that I get a thank you for my street sign thing. It's a great icebreaker. I get to test and see how much this really works and how you apply this good theory. So having spent some time working with the university recently, I'm hoping I can share some of my back to reality comments.
So I'm managing the slides. So between us, Zoe's going to have to kind of do to move us on to the next slide. So just kind of bear with us. I know the first bits because I'm going to do them, and then I'll be supporting Zoe. She kind of does the more interesting part of the tool. So really, the best management practice, even though there's lots of textbooks out there on portfolio management, what's still seen to be the definitive text on doing portfolio management goes back to the Axelos management of portfolio. So for those of you who don't know that, it's available in all good bookstores. Or not, I think it's only available from PeopleCert now, but there we go. That's the text that we're going to kind of just refer to, and I'm just going to talk you through some of the kind of the key elements of if you live in a perfect world where portfolio management is kind of fully established and working in your organization. These are some of the things that you will hopefully recognize. As I said, Zoe will go on and kind of talk about what it means in reality. And I think fundamentally, portfolio management, much as kind of some people think it's about actually kind of managing all of the projects and programs and make sure they're delivered correctly. The reality is portfolio management is actually helping the organization balance business as usual and the change. Having worked with a lot of sponsors, they say, oh, I haven't got time to be a sponsor and do projects. I've got a day job. And you say, well, actually, your day job is fine, but being a sponsor or kind of being involved in projects and programs means you can be a manager tomorrow, next week, 3 months' time and 6 months' time. And organisations have to very carefully balance about how much time and effort do I spend on projects and how much time and effort do I want to spend on business as usual? Because if we spend all of our time doing business as usual and insufficient investment in change, then very quickly our organisations will kind of fall behind in terms of kind of technology, will fall behind in terms of kind of the some of the products that we offer, some of the courses that we run. However, we spend too much time on change and neglect our business as usual, we'll have no business to implement the changes into. So it's a very kind of careful balance that needs to be done on a regular, not necessarily frequent, but on a regular basis. And, kind of the top and bottom arrows are really kind of quite important, because portfolio management is also about making sure that we understand what the potential changes are and how they get kind of started in the change the business side of things. But also we have to be really careful that when those projects, programs deliver back into business as usual, it doesn't disrupt the business. So really kind of portfolio management is looking after that kind of ecosystem of run the business and change the business, what changes can be done, should be done, are going to be done, and also making sure they go kind of safely back in the business and our business continues to develop as we'd anticipated. So fundamentally, I think it's a really interesting when we think about portfolio management. It isn't just about the projects and programs. It's very much about that relationship with business as usual, recognizing that as a whole, we're there to deliver our institution's kind of strategic direction and objectives. And again, fundamentally, when we're starting to pull together our portfolio of change, it absolutely needs to be aligned to the strategy of the organisation. Now, there's lots of kind of conversations around whether, kind of the PMO gets involved in the development of that strategy. And we've got a paper and a conversation around that in our library. But actually, even if we don't get involved in that strategy, where we need to get involved is understanding how that strategy is going to be played out through some business as usual, but what changes and how those changes align to strategy. So there has to be this absolute alignment with the portfolio of change, with the the strategy of the organisation. And now what's always interesting, so it automatically assumes in the perfect world that there is an organisation, an institution-wide strategy, and there is a portfolio office that sits at the top of that organisation that has that organisation view about how the whole kind of organisation is playing together. Another kind of fundamental prerequisite of effective portfolio management is that we have effective decision-making bodies, and that those decision-making bodies have accurate and timely information so they can make informed decisions. Now, looking through some of the kind of the conversation we had in the breakout rooms, this is some kind of real challenges for your organizations to have this. But essentially, the key bits in terms of kind of the business as usual, working across the business, knowing what we're delivering, having project program portfolio officers that are aligned and support the delivery of that change. But then we have these kind of three governance bodies. One is kind of just the standard project program boards that are progressing each project and program. We have a portfolio progress, which is kind of a tactical delivery board that oversees the portfolio to make sure that, kind of any immediate issues are dealt with. But then we also have a portfolio direction board, or essentially an investment committee, which are the kind of decision-making body in terms of how much money we're going to invest in projects and programs, and making the decisions in terms of what comes into that portfolio and any kind of key exceptions and how that needs to be dealt with. So some interesting kind of expectations from organizations, and it's quite interesting to reflect on which of those decision-making bodies you actually have in your organization, whether it's all kind of together or actually the PMO trying to compensate for the lack of those bodies. But that's what kind of best practice talks about. And I think the fundamental kind of processes that sit within management of portfolios is 5 key principles, which are those things on the left. So there's a portfolio office. We have an energized change culture. Anybody want to put their hand up and say, we've got an energized change culture in our organisation? Yes, everybody's there and kind of behind all of the changes that need to take place. Senior management commitment, and again, lots of conversations with PMOs saying, well, yes, they don't, you know, they agree with what we're doing. And I think there's a difference between agreeing with what you're doing and real commitment to actually kind of support and make sure that what's put in place actually has some teeth and really kind of makes change happen in the organisation. We've talked a bit about governance and strategy alignment, so those are two of the kind of the 5 principles. And then when we go onto the right hand side, we've got these kind of 2 evolving kind of circles which kind of go simultaneously at the same time. On the left hand side, we're in a constant portfolio definition where we want to understand the various projects and programs that need to be delivered and potentially what their contribution is going to be to strategy. We want to categorize them in terms of kind of making sure kind of different types of projects, so whether that be different parts of the organization geographically or departmentally, or it may even be in terms of kind of the delivery frameworks that are going to be used. We do some prioritization, and again, I've already spotted some conversations about, you know, kind of on what basis are things prioritized. Essentially, that should be contribution to strategy. Balance is around making sure that we actually we're doing the right projects and the right programs in the right order. Projects that need to be clumped together as a program or set up accordingly. And actually, that kind of balance is also aligned to our business cycles or organization cycles. You know, the last thing we want to do is put in a new finance system just before year end, or just before we've got kind of a whole influx of kind of new students and getting them all kind of set up. So just make sure we balance and then plan about having that visibility as much as anything in terms of what our plan is for the next kind of 6, 12, potentially up to 3 years in terms of delivery. So we've got that kind of portfolio definition. All of those 5 practices need to be addressed on a regular but not necessarily frequent basis. And again, some organizations do that once a year. Interesting, some organizations are now looking to do that every quarter rather than every year because they need to be more agile in their portfolio delivery. So while we're kind of making sure what's in the portfolio is right, what we also need to do over the right-hand side is make sure that actually we're delivering well. And the 7 practices aligned to P3M3, those 7 practices of the elements of project and program management that we can, you know, it's possible to do a maturity assessment of, to make sure that we've got all of those elements in place to ensure each individual project and program, as well as the portfolio itself, is delivering well. And I always find that kind of when Craig wrote MOP, that interesting kind of little kind of helix he's put in the middle in terms of organizational energy. Your organization has to have the real kind of stomach to actually kind of deliver that change. And we all know change is not easy. And again, one of the things, and I think I quoted almost every session now, part of the role of the PMO is to ensure that we can deliver projects and programs with less energy and less adrenaline in our organisation. So yes, some excitement, but let's try to make it as easy as we can. Obviously, we can't make it easy, but we can make it as easy as we can for those involved in delivery. So that's the theory. Sounds brilliant, and I'm sure anybody who would want to work in an organisation with all of those lovely things in place. Zoe's going to tell us some real life stories of places that perhaps didn't have everything. Zoe.
Well, let me tell you, Eileen, I love the theory. Let's just step back a moment. I have to say, everybody, thank you, by the way. And I do want to mention that the university that I worked with is represented here. So I will be caught out if I say anything wrong, which is quite funny. But good working with you, Paula. So yeah, let's just move on to the next thing, because I had the delight of going to be able to work with a university, and I've worked, as I said, with many companies, different organisations, private and public, over the year. So when I had the opportunity of working with a university, that picture on the left hand side is kind of what I was seeing. It was beautiful, the sun was shining, I'd be in a place of education and calm, and everything would be organised because it would make sense. The reality was actually a little bit more like the right hand side. And I can tell you that I've had fun with ChatGPT. These images have been built as a result of me saying what I felt and what I saw. So this might resonate with some of you. I think one of the things that, if I had a pound for every time it was said, that I hit a lot when I was talking about models and theory and a good way to do portfolio and project management, the response that I often got was, yeah, but universities are different, Zoe. It's different here. It's not the same as anywhere else. No, not true. So that's where I started with. You can take all your learning and your models, because it's different here, which is quite interesting. So first of all, I'm just going to take you through a few challenges that I identified, and see how that resonates with you. And once again, this is working with the university, so thank you. So the first one is cultural inertia. Sounds a bit posh, doesn't it? But hopefully, once again, when you look at the image here, what I felt that I was joining this kind of working with this organisation that was kind of steeped in history. We've got all the benefit of being in a world of thinking and learning. Then we've got our technology that's on the side. So I kind of thought that we would have this amazing environment. But the fact is that tradition can sometimes breed behaviours that are hard to get rid of. So you can get stuck in some of those structures which make it hard for you to bring things like the picture, Vicky or Evelyn. Take that story and to understand how that fits in there. How do you balance? Yeah, we have always done it. How do you balance working within that environment of learning, but also in that place where people know everything? They've been there, they've done it, and well, this is the way that we do it in a university, because a university is different. And whilst research and doing exciting things is always at the forefront, the bits that keep it all running together, that's the way we've always done it. That's how we continue. So building that strong case for change is really important to help overcome some of that resistance. Thank you. So that was one of the challenges that I identified. The next one that's coming to us is, I'll tell you what would you, there we go, is our diverse stakeholder groups. For those of you who use ChatGPT and have created images, I don't know why it is, but they don't like spelling. And as someone who is a little bit OCD, this hurts me quite a lot, just so you know. But one of the challenges that we have here is that we have so many very, very diverse stakeholder groups. And this is something that I think is something that you will recognise very much in a higher education environment, and that is you have your students. So with your students, you need to make sure that that they are receiving the education that they're paying for, but you also need to make sure that the environment in which they're working is appropriate to their expectations, and that we're looking after their academic story at university, but also their environmental story. I think that COVID, with all the terrible things that we got from it, some of the growth and the development and the acceptance of new technology really really came out of that. So people were working from home, students were in their rooms. It's my daughter started university this year after my university experience, and I can see how things have changed. Some of her studying is now hybrid, it's now working from her room, so you can see some of those things come through. It's interesting that it took such an amazing enormous event to happen in history to really force that kind of change to come out, because you need a big catalyst, I think, in these older traditional places. So getting all these different groups, we have our student groups, then we have our central services, we're trying to keep everything, the lights on. Then we have our researchers who, in my short experience, are the demigods. They are the people that bring in the money, and therefore if they say jump, then we all jump, because that's the way we need to do things. They are quite a powerful group. And then we have our council, those guys who are helping make those universities work, and they are often academics, so they have some really good backgrounds and histories and how to run academic organisations, but they don't necessarily get the mechanics of how to make it all happen and how to prioritise the funding appropriately. So making sure that you identify all of those stakeholder groups and thinking about the best way to engage and to empathise and to understand what their drivers are, to allow you to then talk to them about what other people's drivers are, other groups, and you can tie those together and think about that comprehensive plan that will identify all those different stakeholder groups. And I have to say, it's not easy. That for me was definitely a challenge at the university with these such diverse groups. Thank you. So funding constraints. So in every organisation we have funding constraints, don't we? For me, the challenges here were, if you were the researchers and you were bringing in good money, then you had all the priority. So the areas that, that maybe needed the money investing, they didn't have the income, and therefore they didn't necessarily get the support that they needed. Prioritisation, we've talked about this. Prioritisation, I saw, sometimes came down to how powerful that faculty or that organisation was, as opposed to what was right for the organisation. And that, I think, was something that did strike me as a particularly university higher education thing. So yes, tight budgetary constraints, getting in the right number of students so that you get your income, making sure you get your right balance of your international students, and making sure that you're balancing that funding between both day-to-day running the business and also kind of investing in things to take you forwards into the future. Just one thing before we go on to the next slide, and that is, and I'm interested on people's thoughts in chat on this, is the model, because I think it was a bit of a blocker at times, run the business, change the business, sometimes gave people a view of, well, that's business, that's the professional word, that we don't do it here because we're different, we're a university, so maybe we need to be saying run the organisation, change the organisation, or something like that. Thank you. So the fourth of the challenges that we've got coming in here is around regulatory and compliance type pressures. Now, for me, this once again was quite a surprise, and that is how much process and bureaucracy is involved, and the people that were making the budgetary decisions really high up in the organisation, quite separate coming in from there. The fact that you are reliant in higher education on the funding coming in from those two sources, that's a real challenge. In fact, the university is much more of a business than I had really thought about. There is that constant sell and that challenge in there. So that was quite interesting, and I didn't realise how many things really came into the student world. Of course, you've got your HR, but you've also got things to consider like international students, making sure that they are using their visas appropriately, making sure that we're reaching various things on there. So the regulatory compliance things were different, but the same as you'd see in any other organisations. But I think it's really important to understand what those constraints are and making sure that you are really conscious of that right from the very start. So just going to walk through now, I just want to tie back to that portfolio management. So you can see those models that Eileen talked about earlier. I call you worse than that, so we're okay. So you've got these models here. How do we make that work? How do we put that in? We need to implement those robust portfolio management practices. We don't have to tell people that they are robust portfolio practices. I find the best way with multiple people that I work with is to prove them, is to put them in place and show that people are getting the value, and make sure that you are providing that consistent way of looking, which is where this portfolio comes into place. So making sure that you are tying everything to doing things in this set way, and that you can tie back to strategy across the place. Thank you. So talking a little bit more about that strategy, I had a wry smile, and I saw a number of you smile as well with the comments. Strategic plan. So does the university have a strategic plan? And if it does, do the different faculties and departments, does their align to it? And then when you look at I've worked with IT, when you look at your IT strategy, does that go through? And that's quite a challenge. I have to say it's a challenge in most of the organisations I've worked with. But I think it's really important to demonstrate that you are doing that. Look right to the top and talk the values of your clients, exactly as it's saying here, so that you are focusing on that change in the business. You are always looking forwards and showing the value that comes through there. So when you're always looking ahead rather than just dealing with the now, it's much easier to think to take people along that journey. Thank you. Resource optimization and efficiency. So this is interesting. As I've said a few times, sometimes you have projects which are because the person who's most important has shouted loudly. What we need to do is show what I believe to really make things impactful is to be able to show value really easily. And that's by getting those projects in place that don't require a lot of effort but give you a lot of impact, because once those people start getting the value from receiving those projects, they become more likely to listen to you and to understand that you've got these things in place. I do think, and I made a wry joke about it at the beginning, it's interesting that I talked a lot about these models and how to apply things at the university. The university in its academic world didn't necessarily agree with the books and felt that they knew better. So how do you join those two things together? How do you demonstrate that this sensible, proven, well-tested model does actually apply in all places, and you can show how they join together? And when you look at the things in here, look, resource management, stakeholder management, if you put those into the words that align to your university, you will see there's little difference, but you can focus on getting the value out of them. Thank you. And then stakeholder engagement and communication, always a good place to get to. We do like a little bit of energy. We talked about that earlier, getting people to get involved. I spend a lot of time talking to people and helping them to understand that I understand them. And this happens with every organisation I work with. It's really important to know who you are working with, understanding those different stakeholder groups, making sure that people feel represented. When you are doing that, then people start to buy in. Okay, get them to see the value, explain it to them, help them to understand that. That's really critical for me, and making sure that you're using consistent ways of delivering information. It is a challenge. I found one of the things that every single stakeholder group like to receive information in a different way, and there was this traditional feel that actually that's the way they've always received it, so that's the way I should do it because that's the university way. I actually just started delivering information in the way I wanted to, and checked in with people and said, are you okay with this? And I got positive feedback, because I just asked them why they liked it that way. I asked them what worked for them and if there was any problem. And a lot of the time, I have to say that the way we'd always done it wasn't necessarily best for them. We just didn't take the time to ask them. So really understand your stakeholders. And then finally, investment appraisal. I can say one of the great things I think they did at the university was actually to say, right, we have this budget constraint, people have their different money, it's hard to be able to spend it in the right way, and to make sure that we're keeping the lights on as well. See how you can get a budget agreed in line with your annual year, to combine those and be able to have money that you can flex and react to things that are going on. So continually reprioritizing and knowing when to stop and go. So finally, this is one of my favourite, nearly finally, change readiness and capability. So back with that change culture again. Spend the time with the people who are delivering to help them to understand what's going on. Making sure that the people who are talking to the guys in the university know how to do that. If we just send them out into the wilds of the faculty, they will come back with bloody noses. So help them to understand and equip them with that consistent way of working. And if we are consistently using models like MOP, then we kind of start to get people to not rely on the individual, but to rely on the fact that you've got a proven process that keeps working. And then you're getting into that building that habit and building that new tradition, if you like. So finally, she says, one of my very favourite phrases, feast on the crumbs. And the reason I like this, and I actually picked this up from a conference from the headmaster of the worst school, the worst comprehensive in Britain. He took a school in Tower Hamlets. He turned it from the worst performing school to an outstanding school. And he used this phrase, and that was, you are not going to get everything done in a day or even a year. Okay, and there will be tears and tribulations on the way. Putting in models like this take time. Don't beat yourself up. Enjoy those small victories when you've got them. Make the most of them. Feast on those crumbs and go for the long journey and get to your success. I hope that's helped. Eileen, sorry I did go over a couple of minutes there.
No,
I hope that
that's
was useful.
okay. Not a problem, that's fine. And as I said, I think it went in chat earlier on, and you know, this kind of relationship between the theory and practice. There is still value in actually kind of learning the theory, because it's actually from the theory you understand how you can tailor it and do what's right for your organisations. I hope that's useful. Both Zoe and I are available on LinkedIn if you want to chat and have the conversations further. Otherwise, I'm going to hand back to you, Lindsay.